Talented Michelle.
Hi, Bruce.
Hi, Woody. Hi, Michele. Nice to see you, Michele.
You too.
I don't get to see you often enough, other than in pictures.
Yeah, no, not very often.
Michelle's holding down the fort while I do the village stuff in the meantime. So we're yin and yanging it, but she's been active on the weekends, getting the Quonset hut gutted and the garbage removed. So she's quite a hustler in all this. And now that
So
we're
you moved 2 tons of garbage out, Woody was telling me.
Yeah, we did. We were sore the next day well, I was sore anyways.
so was I.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Did I ever show you, Michele, what our Barndominium looked like when I got it back from the previous tenant? Are you still there?
Yeah, we're here, Bruce.
Michele, did I ever show you what the Barndominium looked like when I got it back from the previous tenant?
No, I don't think I have seen that.
Oh, I got to show you this. I mean, just it'll make you feel like your Quonset hut was much, much better. Hang on a second. I'll share my screen with you. So I think you know where it is. It's up at Dunrobin Lake, which is in Dunrobin, which is in Canada. So should be able to see on the screen here. Here's the Barndominium, and we have a little cabin in the woods next to it. I've showed you this, Woody, have I not?
I've seen this, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think you have, Michele.
No, well, I heard of it, but yeah, no, I don't know if I've seen it, the Barndominium.
Barndominium. So anyway, so here's a little closer up view of it. And this huge pond over here and this smaller one over here, I dug those out. I mean, there's a beautiful sand here. And people ask me how much these ponds, because I've done them, I don't know, a dozen of them, cost, but that's not the right question for an entrepreneur, Michele. The right question is not how much does something cost, it's how much does something make. And so I sold this sand and made about $1.2 million from sand sales. So anyway, so this was an old barn that I actually existed about 15 or 16 kilometers away, and I took it apart with the permission of the former owner, numbered and lettered it, and rebuilt it on our property because it was such a beautiful barn. He was just going to tear it down. And here are a list of tenants here. So it's very similar to what you've done with Woody. We've got a guy by the name of Abed. He does kitchens and bathrooms. We've got an importer and exporter. We got a guitar maker in there. We've got a group that does plastic recycling. We've got a boat builder in there. We've got a dog walk trainer. We've got a fashion designer in there. We've got some mini storage units in there. We've got a couple of homes, little homes that are on the site as well. Then we have some operating expenses here. And Woody, this is operated by my daughter, Jessica, and my wife, Dawn. And they have got their operating expenses down to about 26% of gross operating income, which is pretty good.
Yeah, normally it's 34, right?
Yeah, my rule of thumb is 34%. So they've done a pretty good job keeping the cost down. And this is the money that we pay ourselves, right? The $4,200. I mean, it's still there because if we didn't pay them to manage it, we'd pay somebody else to manage it, but that's what we do. All right.
Okay.
And so, so this is, Woody, this is something this slide deck that you're seeing now, you and Michele are seeing now, is something I prepared for my appraiser before she appraised it. And so you can see the total income. So 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago, when we got it back from the previous tenant, Michele, we had zero income on it. The tenant was terrible. It took us months to get rid of them. And we built up income to almost $79,000 a year, which is not bad.
That's great.
From zero. And then here's our OPEX. So our net operating income is about $58,000. And so we estimated the cap rate was about 960, 965.
Okay.
And then here's the list of improvements we made. I won't read it, but it's a very similar list to what you're going through. It was huge. And then this, again, is just something I prepared for the appraiser. So I put in all the property taxes. I'm just going to skip through these slides because you don't need them. But, I put everything in this that the appraiser needs, right? What we're paying for property taxes, And then I put some other slides in here of interest. So this is a different shot of the Barndominium. And Woody, I think you know that we have put a number of storage containers on the building, on the property, right?
Yeah,
And so Michele, here's, we bought these from Metalcore, and they actually come from Toronto. They come with their crew. They assemble them on site. So you'll see a number of photographs here, which will show you, here's the crew. They're getting busy, erecting the structure.
Oh, okay, I've seen those before. They look great.
Yeah, they're nice, eh? And
Yeah.
they're expensive. I mean, this delivered and assembled was about $11,500, almost 12 grand, I think. And so they're both 10 by 10. So we got two 10 by 10. So each one costs about $5,500 to $6,000, but we rent them for $135 a month together with a workshop for more. And so the cap rate on this is probably about 20%, which is okay. It's actually pretty good, right? But if you were to actually build a storage building, it would be much cheaper than this per 10 by 10. But for us, we just, and they're portable. You can put your forklift under here and move them if you want. So that's pretty good. We have a boat builder up there, so we put in a boat ramp here, which so he could actually test his boats. And here's a typical workshop, one of our workshops, right?
Okay.
Are you bored yet?
No, not at all. I'm looking at the floor and I'm looking at your open door windows. Well, the door with the windows for the lights in. Matt was telling me.
Yeah, exactly. So some of these two workshops here, I think they have outside windows, but this one didn't. It's interior. So we put in a door with lights in it, so it does let some natural light in. And you'll notice we have two overhead doors to service the property, and they're all keypad operated.
Okay.
And here's an example. So it is a concrete floor, and the workshops have maybe 9 or 10 foot ceiling heights. They're not very tall. So we got inside. We have a bunch of these guys. These storage containers, a little different from the ones outside. They're a little cheaper. And our workshops, Woody, are not, as you know, they're not fancy. But people who are using our workshops don't really care. They just want a place where they can go, right? Here's just this is while the Barndominium was under construction. There's just some more of these containers that we have in there. They're pretty good. We put in all kinds of workbenches and other things as well. You can see the workbench on the right-hand side. We have a few of those in there. And just another picture of it. Oh, and then Woody knows this, Michele. I'm not sure Woody's going to do it, but we do allow some of the people with tiny homes to park on our site. They're not supposed to live in it, but they do.
Okay.
And this is owned by George and Brett. This is huge. It's 55 feet long, and it's called a tiny house, but it's big. And they pay $500 plus HST to park on our site, and it's just a parking lease. And if I ever get called to account by the bylaw officer, I'll say, well, "What are you talking about? It's a parking lease. They pay $500 a month to park their trailer there. Too bad." Well, are they living in it? It's a parking lease.
Okay.
So one of the things you do is you never self-incriminate, okay?
yeah,
If they say, well, did you know that somebody's parking in there? All I can tell you is I have a parking lease. Well, did you know that somebody's living there? All I can tell you is it's a lease to park their trailer there. Would you like to see their lease? Did you know? It doesn't matter how many times they ask me, Michele, it's always the same answer. I never self-incriminate.
Okay.
Okay, but I also don't give a rat's ass about bylaws. Okay, I mean, I can't coach you on that, obviously, but I don't care. And these people are super, super great. They take care of the place as if it's their own. So we put in a little kitchen here, Michele, which you can see here on the left.
This is in the Barndominium?
In the Barndominium, yeah, we got a little kitchen. It's not much. And then we've got we have a full bathroom in there. We have a well and septic on site. So we have a full bathroom in there. You can see it here. It's quite nice. So if somebody needs to take a shower, they can. Here's another one of our workshops.
Okay.
Just more of the shots of the container. Just another nice shot of our Barndominium. And Woody, I don't know if I ever told you this, that last year, for the first time in 25 years, our barn started to show a lot of wear and tear because of woodpeckers. Did I tell you that?
Oh,
Can you see all the sort of can you see all the gashes on the front here?
yeah.
That's woodpeckers.
Right.
So this year, I bought my property manager, who is my daughter, Jessica, a slingshot. And she's going to go out there and go ping. And that'll be the end of the woodpeckers. I mean, you got to be creative. And we don't have any mice in the building. Do you know why? We have a barn cat.
Okay.
His name is Marty.
Do you feed it or you just let it
Oh
run
yeah, we
wild?
feed him. Of course, we feed him and we take care of him. But he lives in the barn and there are no mice. He is a hell of a mouse. People will tell you, oh, you got to set traps and you've got to put mouse bait in. Bullshit. Excuse my language, Michele, but BS.
Right.
You get yourself a humane society, and we don't feed him. Either George and Brett feed him, or my daughter Jessica feeds him. But we take good care of him. We make sure he has water, and the barn is heated, of course. So there's no air conditioning in there. For industrial, Michele, if somebody wants AC, they get a fan.
Okay.
Right, that's it. But we do, of course, heat it. And I have clients in Florida doing this kind of stuff, Woody, and for them, there's no heating. If you want a heater, get yourself a little portable something, I guess. But they do have air conditioning because Florida, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Right. So we had a problem with woody woodpeckers.
Yeah.
And here's Abed. He's one of the young men he's a fantastic carpenter, does kitchens and bathrooms, and here he is. This is the guy who makes guitars out of cigar boxes. He's even older than me, Michele.
What size workshop would that one?
He's 200 square feet. And and I have to tell you, Michele, his wife is super. She loves me. She says I get Dave out of his house 3 or 4 days a week. This is where he makes his handmade cigar box. Guitars are beautiful, and they play like anything. And she thinks I'm great. This is our boat builder. That's his workshop. That's 200 square feet as well, Woody. And you can see they're not fat. We even have a stack washer and dryer in there. If you have to wash your clothes, you can. Oops. Then we have a septic. These are septic tanks. You know what those are, right, Michele?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so here's the barn itself. There's the septic tanks, and there's the septic field. I don't want to tell you what this thing costs. $37,000 for that septic system.
Yeah.
$37,000 for the tanks and the system.
Ouch.
Yeah, and the plumbing. We got a permit for that, of course. You have to get a permit for that. This is my wife looking at. We have a water treatment system in there, Michele. Our well has lots of water, but the water quality is shitty. And we have a reverse osmosis system in there. You want to know what that thing cost me? $28,000.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but it produces water that is really, really good. All right, so there you go. Now this is what I wanted to show you as well. This is what it looked like when we got it back from the previous tenant. It took us about 5 or 6 months, maybe a little bit longer, to get rid of him. And he left it in a terrible state. Look at this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh
Wow.
Ouch.
That looks familiar.
Can you believe it?
We can believe it.
Yeah, but awful. That's too bad.
Look at that.
Yeah.
He mistreated it so badly. And this is, I just threw this picture in there to show you, Michele, that this was actually, as I said, it was actually on another property about 15 or 16 kilometers away. We took it apart and we reassembled it here. And here are 3 of my daughters who are now in their 20s and 30s. This is Jessica, Miriam, and Rachel swimming in the pond, right? And here they are hanging out at the beach. And here's this is what we used to be used for, which was it was a party place. And then we have next door, about 100 feet away, we have this little hunting cabin of mine, which we converted to a full house. We got a house here, Michele, in 192 square feet. Did I show you this too, Woody?
I've not seen that, no.
Okay, so this is where one of my daughters lives. She broke up with her boyfriend. She needed a place to hang her hat. So Jessica lives in here, 192 square feet, Michele, and she has her workshop where she does her clothing design and manufacturing, about 150 feet away. So here it is here. And it's got a little porch. And then this is the inside. So this one, Woody, has a composting toilet here. It's from Separate. It's called Separate because it separates out the liquids from the solids. It's very good. She's got a shower here and a sink here. Then there's her fridge and cupboards above. This is her kitchen area. Her pantry is just a series of shelves. You got to remember, it's very small. There's the electrical panel. You can see her kitchen a little bit more clearly on the left-hand side. Then as you come in the front door, here is her coat closet, so to speak. You know, this is where her shoes go and her coats are hung up here. And when Marty comes to visit from the barn, he can walk over. He does. He comes and scratches at the door to say hi to Jessica. He can live in this. He has a little cat box in here. And then this is the great room, such as it is, with a day bed that turns into a bed for her at night.
Okay.
And, it has its own gas hookup. It has its own heat pump, obviously its own electricity, and it's got a driveway that you could probably fit, I don't know, 8 cars in it. It's huge. And just another close-up of the gas meter. And of course, it's all boarded up and it's insulated, of course. She's got a little Rubbermaid shed for her tools and her garbage. That's just her outdoor deck. And then there's I did another pond in behind, so I dug this pond as well for her. And it's absolutely a sweetheart kind of location. And this is what the cabin looked like before we renovated it for Jessica. It was an old hunting and fishing cabin. And so obviously there's almost nothing left of the original structure. And we do have a skylight in there too, which you can see here.
Did you have to get a builder's permit for that?
Well, this cabin has been on site for almost 40 years. It's well, it's probably 35 years. I built it with my 2 boys when they were little, and we used it for hunting and fishing. This is when it was a rural area and there was nobody living there. So it's been there for 40 years and nobody's ever bothered us. So I didn't get any permits for this at all. We just you know, we called it a renovation, but you know, really we rebuilt it from. I mean, there's a few 2x4s left in the roof, I think. So there's a bit of it, but no, we did not ask anybody for any permits. We did have a permit for the pond excavation, and we also had a permit for something else. Oh yeah, we went with the Electrical Safety Authority, the ESA, which you can get very simply, you know, the ESA. So we did electrical and everything else according, but everything was built to code. It's safe. You know, but no, we did not ask the city for a permit because we wouldn't have got one.
Understood.
Okay, and again, Michelle, I can't coach you and Woody in that direction, but you know, my daughter needed a place to live, and I was just going to make sure that happened for her. So this is what we did.
Absolutely.
And what's interesting though was, you know, I thought the appraisal would come back at about 950 to 965, but between the Barndominium and the cabin, it came back at 1.2 million.
Sweet.
26.3% above our expectations, which is nice. Usually the appraisals are lower. And this is fairly recent. This is in the last few weeks.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So I wanted to show you this just to give you a sense of it. But also, Woody, when you are going to reappraise your property, which I would like you to do, Woody, can you come a little closer? Because all I see is a bit blurry and it's making me sick. Not you making me sick, the blurry stuff is making me sick.
Okay, yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is that's the level of detail and work I want you to do, you and Michele to do when you are submitting for an appraisal. And you make sure, Michele and Woody, that your appraiser reads it in advance. She gets it or he gets it in advance. And if they say, well, I don't really need any information from you, you fire them. You don't, you say, look, if you're not going to go, because I mean, how would she know? This was a woman who did it for me. Her name's Rebecca Simon, terrific appraiser. And I would suggest you use her for your appraisal. She's doing an appraisal.
Sorry, Bruce, do we get a choice as to which appraiser we use?
Well, it depends. If you're going with an A lender, like the TD Bank or Scotia Bank or Royal Bank of Canada, the answer is no. They'll have their own list of, you'll pay for it, but it'll be from their list. And their appraisers are under instructions. They will never admit it, but they're under instructions to cut the appraisals today by at least 20%. So instead of getting an appraisal for 950 or 965 is what we expected, the appraisers might come back at 800,000. Which would be really bad for us. But in the case of B lenders, like Equitable Trust, Home Trust, Equitable Bank, I should have said Home Trust, and others, they're much more flexible. And Rebecca Simon and her father, Michael Simon, have their own firm, and they're extremely well respected, and they are excellent appraisers. They're not trying to pump up our tires, Woody, yours and mine, but they're also not trying to cut us off at the knees, which is what the banks are doing today. I mean, the A lenders, if they could get away with it, would do no commercial lending whatsoever. They would do zero. And they would do a home mortgage. Michele, let's say you worked for the government of Canada, made $180,000 a year, and Woody worked for the government of Canada, made $180,000 a year. You have a family income of $360. You're buying a $2 million home, but you have $1 million in cash. You both have credit scores in the 800s. That the Royal Bank wants to talk to you, but they don't want to talk to you. In my experience, anyway, as entrepreneurs, if you go and see them, the Royal Bank, they'll say, "Come on in, Michele, come on in," and they'll put you through the ringer. They'll ask for everything, your firstborn child and then more. And after 4 months, they'll turn you down. So they'll put you through, literally 10 or 15 hours of work over a period of 4 months. And then say, well, we didn't really like the deal.
Okay.
What are you going to do? So
Right.
instead of doing that, I mean, instead of paying back before the interest rates went crazy, I was paying 3 and 4% on my deals instead of 2 and 3%. So I was paying at least a point more. But what's the point of saying you could have a 2% mortgage if they're going to refuse it?
Exactly.
I mean, it's not real. It'd be like saying, I'd like to be rich like Elon Musk. Well, yeah, that'd be nice, but it's not real, right? So there's no point for me comparing myself to Elon Musk.
Right.
Right.
So,
Elon is the richest person in the world. There's only one of them.
so the moral here is when we do go for an appraisal, we wouldn't go with a class 1 bank, for example. We'd look towards like Home Trust or someone like that, where there's more flexibility.
Yeah. What I would like you to do actually is work with BDC. They're fantastic. I think I've introduced you to Amelia Campbell, right?
That's
No?
we're going down that path. We're getting to know each other. I think we're going to get a term sheet sometime next week. And so when that does come through, I will most definitely.
So can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, because I mean, my internet is terrible. I converted to Bell 5 and it's worse than Rogers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they sold us a bill of goods. It's horrible. But anyway, so yeah, certainly BDC, Equitable Bank, Home Trust, all of the B lenders and the BDCs. BDC is not a B lender, but they are the Bank of Entrepreneurs. They'll work with people like Rebecca Simon. They're fine with that.
Okay, good. Fantastic.
I need you to do a slide deck like what I showed you, Woody. And what I'm going to do is, hang on a second. I think I have a link in here, and you can download my slide deck if you want to, because I know you're a good student, Matt. So I'm going to put this in the chat box so you can download the slide deck so you can see what I did, okay?
Yeah.
And I gave it to Rebecca, and sure enough, the appraisal came back, really, I think, first class. All right, so it should be in the chat box now.
Yeah.
You have to copy it out of the chat box because after we finish it, it'll disappear. All right. So that just gives you an overall idea of where I'm at. A couple more things, Michele. I did say to Woody this morning that our endless renovation of our multi-use or mixed-use multi-residential building in Belleville, we finally got our occupancy permit yesterday.
Oh, congratulations. Yeah, I heard about that. That sounds awesome.
Oh my God, 2.5 years of work. It's a year late. It's at least $2 million over budget.
Ouch. Oh,
Ouch. And but that's the bad news. Bad news, that I just gave you the bad news. The good news is that revenues have more than doubled.
that's sweet. That's
Yeah. So our
perfect.
cap rate really didn't move. I mean, it would have been fantastic if we could have done it for this much and had this much income, but it ended up costing us this much and we had this much income. But anyway, the bad news is it's late and it's way over budget. The good news is it's a real treasure and our revenues are off the charts.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's I have a little fear of that for the village. I know I don't know if it's a fear. I know we're going to be behind our, you know, July or June 2023 grand opening, but that's okay. There's steps to take and we're
Yeah,
just
well, I mean, I wish I could tell you this was easy. But the
Yeah.
reason that people don't do what you and Woody are doing is because it's so hard. It's really hard. What you're doing, the physical laboring, the work. I mean, Woody and I worried terribly, I'm sure you did too, about the hydro hookup, whether hydro would at some point say, listen, without contacting the previous owner or the adjacent owner, we can't do a damn thing. Fortunately, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
But here's the good news. If some of the income, even half of the income that Woody and I have projected for the village workshops and storage comes through, which I'm sure it will, I think the damn thing is going to be worth $3 million.
I have great hopes for it. Just I know not to expect it this year. I see my retirement like a year pushed out, but that's okay.
I think that's probably true, and I probably didn't tell you that because I didn't want to disappoint you. But
No.
I think it's true what you just said. But I'm telling you, you know, like this little Dunrobin thing, it's in the middle of a village. It's nowhere near the size of Smith Falls. I mean, Smith Falls must have what 8,000 or 9,000 people now.
Yeah, 10 and change now.
Yeah.
Oh, 10 and change. So it's quite a bit bigger. I mean, the village of Dunrobin, maybe we have 1,000 people, you know. But if I had 40,000 square feet of workshops instead of 4,000, I'd fill them all.
Wow, that's good to know.
Yeah, so I'm, you know, and I think I've talked to you and Woody as well about what happened in Picton, where they had the entire airbase, 700 acres and 40 or 50 workshops, big ones, where they rented them all in less than a year. So I'm confident it will happen. Woody, you had a good lead at one point for one of them. What happened to that?
That was for Service Master.
Yeah, Service Master.
Yeah, and so they ended up going with somebody else. We didn't have the facilities that they needed. We weren't ready, but they got.
So what I'll just turn the camera down here so I can sit for a minute. So what happened with Service Master? What did they need that you couldn't provide?
They needed a place where they could store their stuff that was secure, and we didn't have any of that. The barn was nothing ready, so they just went down the street. There's a few other storage facilities in Smith Falls, and they went there.
Okay.
So I mean, that was a function of us not being ready, as opposed to us not having a market for it.
Okay. So if you had been ready, they might have been able to use your space.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Okay. So it wasn't that we have misread the market, it just not ready.
It was timing, yeah.
Yeah, timing. So Michele, in terms of you know, leasing, on this multi-res building, you know, we've got 2 stories. Floor number 2 and floor number 3 are multi-res. Ground floor is mostly commercial, although we did get permission to put some residential units in back. So we have this mixed-use building, and we had I did some pre-leasing there, but just since I got the occupancy permit yesterday, we have leads for some additional commercial space, and we have a bunch of leads now for the apartments. And I suspect that we will be fully leased probably within a month, maybe 2. So once the place is once you have heat on and you have it ready to occupy, I suspect it will fill up fairly quickly.
Oh, yeah, no, I have no doubt. I'm super confident in our idea and where we're going. It's just, I think our excitement was ahead of, I mean, how things move when you're doing this kind of stuff. So, no, I have no doubt it will do very well. We'll have this conversation in a year and we'll be good to go.
Yeah, and you remember, I think I told you that I helped clients of mine, actually from BC. They've got a national storage company.
Oh, yeah.
Buy a place. It was 20 acres or 21 acres, I think, in L'Oreal, which is like literally in the middle of nowhere, somewhere halfway between Montreal and Ottawa.
Mhm.
And it had 54 existing mini storage units, of which one was rented, but they didn't get any income from it. So really, they were all empty. And just by sprucing up the site and improving their marketing and doing some of the things that you're doing and making sure the site presented well, you know, it took them about 11 months to fill up the 54 units. So they were completely full within the year of buying it. They bought 21 acres, including 54 mostly almost completely empty storage lockers, for less than $500,000. It's very similar to what you and Woody have done. Like the price that you paid for this property in Smith Falls is phenomenal.
Yeah, no, yeah. We're good. I'm happy with it. I'm happy.
Okay, I'm just trying to buck you up, that's all.
No, I'm happy. I'm happy. I see, as I was telling end result, the little parts getting there kind of stressed me out, but I mean, it takes time. We have to figure things out. The hydro was a bit of a setback, but
Well,
hey, you know
now
what?
you
We're
have
still
power,
forward.
Woody. Can you fill me in? What are your, you and Michelle, fill me in. What are your next steps, please?
Sorry, Bruce, can you repeat the question?
So now that you have power,
Okay,
what are your next steps?
We do not have power yet.
Okay,
Okay, so the next steps are, we hit a bit of a hiccup when the trenchers came in last week to do it. They refused to do it because we didn't have a locate. So we did get the locate taken care of. We got the report back from Teledig, and now we're trying to get these guys back on site to actually do the trenching. So we do not have power just yet. I think we have to have a site meeting now with Hydro One and our electrician and the trenchers to make sure that we all agree as to what's happening. So that's the next step. We're moving forward with that. So we do not have power just yet, and when we do, you'll see like a huge beacon go up in the sky.
all right, all right.
We will
You know,
announce that.
they have a beacon in Las Vegas that shoots a beam into outer space, and it's so powerful you could read a book 10 miles into outer space.
No, that's kind of what we're planning as a celebration.
Right. That is a complete waste of money, in my opinion. But it's Las Vegas, right?
Yeah, lost wages.
So you can see this was your agenda that you put together. So Hydro will be operational, we think, in the next week or two.
Yeah.
Okay. And where are you at with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6?
So we've gotten quotes for the installation, and I'm trying to understand what order these things need to happen. So we want to get all of that stuff taken care of, but are we doing it in the right sequence? And the other question that I did have, now that we're talking about trenching, is there's natural gas as well. So should we have trenching done for natural gas at the same time as hydro? That's one of the questions that I don't want to have to do it twice.
So let's talk about insulation. So you can see this is the barn again, the Barndominium, and you can see that we have spray foam insulation, right?
Yeah.
And this spray foam insulation, if you take a chunk of it and you put a lighter to it, it will burn, but it will put itself out. So it's non-flammable. It's amazing stuff. All right. So it acts as an insulator. This is only R12, but that's what we have. We have R12 insulation and it doesn't burn. Okay, you could, and I tested it personally because you hear a lot of manufacturers' claims, Woody. I tested it myself. I took while they were coming in to give me the quote. I said I need to see the product. And I want to test it myself. So I did, and sure enough, you can't actually light it. So
who did you use for insulation?
Oh my God, that's 25 years ago. I have no idea. But I mean, spray foam insulation. There's lots of people who do it. You get 3 quotes. Okay.
Yeah.
You're going to use spray foam insulation, right?
100%. Yeah, I'm just the quotes that have come in so far. We've only gotten 2, but they're within $100 of each other so far.
How much are they? What are the quotes like?
For the entire barn, and I think it was R12 that they said as well.
Yep.
3 with taxes came in around 24,000.
Yeah, I 25 years ago it would have been probably $10,000. But I can tell you it makes all the difference in the world. That if you go into the Barndominium, Michele, I said a few minutes ago that you don't need air conditioning. If you're too warm, you put a fan on. You could go in there on the hottest day in summer because of that insulation and because it's so high, it's cool in there. I'm not kidding you. It could be 25, 30 degrees in Ottawa, and you go in there and maybe it's 23 or 24 because it really cools off at night and it stays cool during the day. So that's because of the R12 insulation. The other thing is it will provide, like I said, fire retardant, and also it's it's actually kind of like a glue. It strengthens the structure. So you can see what we did, Woody, was we blew the insulation and all of the electrical. Can you see the electrical here?
Yeah.
It's all exposed wiring. Can you see that?
Yeah. So you did the insulation prior to the wiring.
The first thing that we did after we cleaned up the barn from the previous tenant was we blew the $10,000 or $12,000 probably to do the whole thing. And this is about the same size, about 4,000 square feet. Yours might actually be a little bigger. We blew the insulation throughout the whole building, and then we wired it.
Okay, yeah.
And
so
again,
that's our plan next, is to, once we get I want to make sure that the hydro happens, because there's no point insulating a barn if we're not going to have hydro. So
yeah, you got to have that. So
yeah.
I think insulation, and then going back to windows and garage door, you can see the overhead door here.
Yeah.
Our overhead door has a keypad on it. You can open it and close it, but you can to get in, the overhead door, you can put the keypad in from the outside, right? So it is motorized.
Yeah, and that's our plan too, is to get an insulated motorized door. So
that's exactly what we did. This is an insulated motorized door. And then over here, I want to see if I can find our heating system. I don't know if I have any pictures that show that, but I'll find some for you. We have a heating system in here. Geez, did I show it? Hang on a second. See if I can find a picture of our heating system. Well, I might not have it here. Oh, I'll find it for you. But anyway, our heating system, I will find that for you. It's very, very, very simple. I'll show you that in a moment. So anyway, let's go back to your agenda. So what we did was we did install windows, Woody. You can see this is one that we boxed in here and put in. Can you see the box?
Yeah.
And we put it in. We did the insulation, like I said, 25 years ago, but this window we actually put in a couple of years ago. So you could just box it in, and if there's any break in the insulation, you can go to Canadian Tire and get that spray foam insulation just like that, and you can insulate it again. So the windows, if you could put the windows in before the spray foam, you would do that. But if you don't, it's not the end of the world.
Okay, yeah. So we were thinking of putting windows at the front.
Yep.
And a couple at the back as well.
Yep.
Just we have lots of
that. That'd be fantastic. That's great. Do you have a well on site?
We don't have a well on site, but there's a well from the adjacent property that you and I have been on site. That
I remember that. So I can tell you what I would do, because a new well will cost you between $5,000 and $7,000. It's expensive and time consuming. So I would just steal the water from my neighbor. I just drop it. I mean, you can't even find your neighbor, right?
Right.
So I mean, he's got a well. If he shows up one day, all you've got down the bottom of the well is a pump, right? So I mean, bringing water from that well that you and I saw on the neighbor's property to your barndominium is easy. Well, water is cheap, as you know, to trench and to pipe. Obviously, you have to be below the frost line, but it's not hard to do. And I would just throw a pump down there and grab the water from him. Now you should test it as well.
Yeah.
Now to test that well, there's two things that you have to do. You can get a potability test. You know what that is, right?
Yeah.
Potability measures for coliforms and E. coli. In other words, it measures for things that, if you were to drink the water, would make you sick. And most cities and towns, I'm sure Smith Falls is no different, will give you a free test, right?
Okay.
Are you aware of that?
I did not know that, no.
Okay. So what you do is you go to to town hall or wherever in Smith Falls, and they give you these free bottles. You see it here?
Yep.
With the instructions. And once you have your pump down your neighbor's well, you pump the well for a few hours because it hasn't been used in probably many years. So there could be all kinds of, excuse my language again, Michele, there could be all kinds of shit down there, right?
Okay.
So you pump it, right? And you let it recharge, and then you pump it and let it, so you use it for a while. Then you test it. And you want to make sure there's no E. coli or coliforms in it, because if there is, if somebody were to drink that water, they could get really sick. You remember there was like one place in Ontario where people were dying?
Walkerton, yeah.
Walkerton, that's it.
Bruce?
Yeah.
Where, this pump that you're talking about, are we doing that ourselves?
Yeah, it's easy to do. You just go, I do it all the time. You just get that little bottle, right?
Yeah.
From the, like Smith Falls will give it to you for free. You get a few of them. I go there, I collect, they just give it to you for free. And then, as I said, you let your well, you pump it and recharge it, pump it and recharge it. Use
But
it.
the pump part. Sorry, the pump part is what I don't understand. We just
okay. So you will need a plumber. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Your plumber will spec your pump. And of course it will need electrical. You just call the plumber up. He'll know. These rural guys, they do it all the time. And your plumber will drop it down the well and connect it to the barn, right? He'll run a line connecting the pump and run a line to the barn, and he'll put a slop sink in for you. And if you want, he'll put in anything else you need water for. You should have at least one hose bib outside and one inside.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
But you can get those test bottles, and when you do it, you just fill up the bottle with water, 3/4 full, and then make sure you don't leave it in the sun. Right? If you put a water in the sun and leave it there when it's hot, if there's any bacteria in there, it'll just, it's like exponential growth. When they test it, they'll say this is terrible, and they'll try and close your well.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
So what you do is you do it, and then you put it on the floor of your front seat of your car, right? So it's cool and it's out of the sun, and you don't wait a day or two. You go straight to the testing lab, and they'll test it, and within a day or two they'll tell you if you have any coliforms or E. coli in it. If you have coliforms E. coli, you don't commit suicide. You get yourself a bottle of ordinary bleach, pour it down, maybe a couple of these bottles, you pour it into the well, you let it sit for 24 hours, and then you pump it, right?
Okay.
And because over the years, who knows what, a squirrel could have pooped in there, right?
Yeah.
Who knows what's in there, Michele? So if you bleach the well, obviously don't drink it after you bleached it, right? You got to run it again, so the bleach kills everything, and then you retest it. Within a few cycles, you'll have, I'm sure, water that will not harm human health.
Okay.
Now,
But again, everything's dependent on hydro right now.
I get that. You got to have hydro.
Yeah.
The second thing that you might do, and this costs about $130, is you might take a sample of the water once you've gone through the potability test. You take it to a lab, and they give you a water analysis, a chemical analysis. So you know if you've got potassium in there, you know if you've got sulfur in there. You probably know you've got sulfur in there just from the smell. But it'll test for sulfur, it'll test for iron, it'll test for all kinds of things. And the lab will give you something called ODWO standards, Ontario Drinking Water Objectives. And you know, it'd be interesting to know if this water is really good, because if it's really good, you don't need to have bottled water to drink. But if it has lots of sulfur in it, or has lots of iron in it, or has some other parameters that salt, too much salt, for example, you might say to your tenants, look, this is perfectly fine for washing your car, doing whatever you need to do with the water, but don't drink it. All right. But it's safe to drink in the sense that if you drink water with sulfur in it, or a little bit of iron, or too much salt, it's not going to kill you. But it's probably not good for you either. So I would pay. I have. That's why I have a reverse osmosis system in my barn, because I wanted people to be able to take showers and just drink the water out of the tap. But you don't need to do that. That's way beyond what you need to do. Don't forget that water system also feeds the cabin, which is 150 feet away. And I didn't want my daughter Jessica drinking water from her tap that would end up, being bad for her health, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So and I've got George and Brett not living in their tiny house, right?
Right. Parking it.
They're parking, exactly, Woody. So they use the water too. So I wanted to make sure that people who are there, and I got to put some more tiny houses on there, by the way, Michele.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm gonna load up on tiny houses. I'm buying at least a couple more for that site, or those two sites, from Aaron Markle and Brad Cartier. I bought one of the sites at Hammond Hill, I think site 9, but I also put in my order for 2 more, because I'm going to put one next to Jessica near where the cabin is, and I'll put another one near where George. I don't care. I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you invest $37,000 in a septic system, Michele, and like $28,000 in a water filtration system, I am going to make economies of scale, if you follow what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
And I'm not asking anybody's permission. If they don't like it, if I ever get an order to cease and desist, first of all, they're only parking leases, and second of all, I will spend a lot of money on legal fees. I'm just saying, I'm not recommending you do something like this, but I will take this to the fucking Supreme Court of Canada before I kick George and Brett off my site, or make my daughter Jessica homeless. I'm super pissed with the city of Ottawa for not allowing tiny homes. You should be able to put a tiny home on your property, the one that you own in Navan. You should just be able to park it there without getting hassled by neighbors or anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
People have nowhere to live in Canada.
Yeah. So Bruce, when it comes to the workshops right now, I noticed that in your Barndominium, you do have some storage containers in there. So our plan for the village is to have it all workshops at this point in time.
100%
So I don't think
correct. I would not do that again. The entire barn should have been workshops, but I got tenants in there and they've got their containers inside, and it's so nice and warm. They don't want to go outside, especially in the wintertime, and get their stuff. But I would not do that again, Woody. You are 100% right. That was a mistake.
Okay, so then in terms of size, we have roughly, well, we have the measurements for the workshops right now. So there's 7 of them downstairs, and they range from, and I think we can make them a little bit bigger because we have some room to work with, but they range from 192 square feet to about 160 square feet each. Now we do have, if you remember when the pictures that we showed you, there's a big opening, and I think that we could extend those workshops out probably 2 or 3, maybe even 4 feet to make them bigger. So that's one of the things that we're thinking about as well. But with that being said, is it best to to have the workshops already built? Like, so let's call them 200 square foot workshops up and down, or do we leave an option for someone who might want an 800 square foot workshop so we don't have to dismantle one of them? Like, so build to suit, or should we have a mix? What are your thoughts around that?
So I like the 192 or 200 square foot workshops. I do. Those are like, you remember my guitar maker, even my boat builder, you know, but the workshops that make sense to me are, what I would do is I would have a couple of 200 square foot workshops built out. I would do that as soon as I could. You know, use LED lighting, which we use. You know, it's cheap to install and it's nice light. So use LED lighting, and you've got 2 workshops ready to go. But the rest of the space I would leave open, because somebody will come along, and we have one in there that's 800 square feet. That was for the Dog Training Institute. Then we have another one in there that's, I think, almost the same size, 800 square feet. It was for the young carpenter, Abed. And, you know, so if we divided them all up into 200 square foot spaces, we would have been ripping stuff out. So what we did was we built, I think, 3 workshops. One was 200 square feet, another was 200 square feet, and then the third one was 300 square feet. So we had 2 200s and 1 300, and we left the rest of the space open. But if you don't have a couple of them done, then people have a terrible idea, you know, visualizing things, right? So it would really help you to have 2 workshops done, and you might do one that's 200, one that's 300, something like that, and leave the rest of the space open. And you're quite right, Woody. Somebody would come along and say, like the dog trainers, and say, "I need 800 square feet," or Service Master, "I need 800." Great.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So the way that we measured it right now, Bruce, was we have these big pillars, right? And so they're divided maybe 15 feet apart every way, and it's not all equal. So the shops vary in size, but they are all, as it stands right now, if you use that pillar as
100%. That's what we did. We did exactly the same thing. And one thing, if you're going to build 2, so people can visualize, then they're right next to each other. So the rest, you don't put one here and then one in the middle, because if somebody comes along and they want 800 square feet and you got somebody already in the middle, right, you're screwed. So you put the 2 that you need or you want, your demonstration units, right next to each other, and then leave the rest of the space open. Does it make sense?
It makes sense, but what I'm struggling with is I think that we can make them a little longer. Maybe not wider, but I think we can make the size of the workshops longer by using that big open space like you have there, right? So if you look at the storage containers that you have, above that would be a loft. And on each side of the garage door, there's a loft, but there's that big open space in the middle.
Right, I remember that. But you still need to have, you know, your corridors for these workshops. Your corridors still need to be very wide.
How wide? Because that is going to determine how much more room we can add.
Yeah. Well, what are you thinking in terms of intrusion? How much space would be left over?
It was like this. Was that 6 feet of you? Didn't you do
That's
that?
how much you would have.
I thought that's what we did. If we extended them out, you went like this, because we said we'd have to have enough space for air, for a light and people moving stuff around. It was whatever your.
Yeah, so I think that there would be a 6-foot wide corridor.
Yeah, you know, on some of the bigger workshop models that I've worked with, we have left enough room between workshops, enough, you know, corridor space to run a front, you know, forklift. And for that, you need a minimum of 8 feet. Because your building is not 40,000 square feet or 80,000 square feet, it's 4,000. 6 feet would be the minimum. I would agree with that. 6 feet would be the minimum. If you can make it 8 feet, that's fine. If you can't, 6 will do. Because I think most, you just have to be careful, but most forklifts can negotiate a 6 foot space, I think. But if you want a forklift in there, 8 feet is more comfortable. So if you could do 8 feet, that would be best. But if you can't, and it's going to be 6 feet, then there's going to be a lot of hand bombing going on.
So the trade-off then there, Bruce, is we leave it as is, one option, in which case it's more than 8 feet.
I like the idea of coming out a little bit. I think that's a good idea. You don't need more than 8 feet, that's for sure.
Yeah, we just want to make sure that the workshops are at least 200 square feet. So
I agree with that. This one that Dave is in, you can see Dave Lewis here, the cigar box guy, is 210 square feet, and it's long and narrow. That doesn't matter. It's long and narrow.
Yeah, it looks similar. Yeah.
Okay.
Bruce, sorry, I hate to go back to this, but I meant to ask you with the insulation, the R12 stuff, I noticed that you had exposed beams with your insulate, or it looked like it on the picture.
Yeah. Hang on, I'll go back to one of them.
Okay, so that's good. We can expose our beams up top, which we didn't
Oh
want.
yeah, for sure. I mean, you can see we've run tubing, cabling, electrical, everything on the skeleton. You can see the insulation here is on in the interstices between our framing, and all the electrical, plumbing, everything is on. It's an industrial building. The nice thing about this industrial space, Michele, is your tenants.
Yeah.
They just want something that's practical and not too expensive. And they're very independent and they pay their bills. I've never had a single tenant not pay their rent on this building.
Awesome. Okay, so perfect. That's the insulation. That was my question. And my other question, you said for us to build 2 as like a showcase workshop. But then, so say Bob comes in and says, I want the next one to be 800, and then someone else says 300, but then they move out in a year or 2. That's the way we just continue to sell them at that size?
Yeah, for example, I now have 2 800 square foot workshops. If somebody came in and said to me, Mr. Firestone, I'd like to have a 400 square foot workshop, divide this one into 2. I would say no to that.
Oh, okay.
I would say no. I mean, listen, Michele, I'm a big fan of augmented tenancy. So what I would say to that person is I'd say, Billy Bob, you want a 400 square foot workshop. The only one I got is 800. So you're renting that. Oh, I can't afford that. Okay. So why don't you find somebody to bunk in with you and charge him, half the rent or more than half the rent and share the space. Oh, I never thought of doing that. Would that be okay? It's called augmented tenancy. So I am not, once I have, I've got all the 200s and the 300s, and then I've got some that are a little bit different, and then I got 2 800s. I'm not changing that. I'm not.
Okay.
So I just tell people that's what I got. 800 square feet would probably be, today I'd probably be charging $1,800 a month. I started off, I probably was at 1,000, but it was a little more than 1,000. I think it was around $1,100. But today it's so hard to find this stuff that I would probably charge $1,800 a month. And somebody would say, oh, I don't have that kind of money. I only have 900. Fine. Find somebody else to share the space with you and they pay the other 900. Oh, I didn't know I could do that.
Okay, that makes sense. Then good to know. So we'll cater to our first.
You're not going to have accordion walls here.
No. Okay.
You're not going to do that. Once you have it set up, it is what it is. But that augmented tenancy thing, it's partly on you, Michele, to educate your tenants, okay? Because they won't think of these things for themselves because they don't know this stuff. I mean, once you get a little bit more experience in this industry, let's say you had 10 of these sites across Canada, the States, at least 1 or 2 in Florida or somewhere so you can take some time off, right, in the warmer weather. But let's say you had 10 of the damn things, you'll have a lot more experience. The average person renting from you may do 3 or 4 leases in a lifetime. By that time you'll have done 50 or 100.
Okay.
So you have to take responsibility to educate your tenants, okay? Because they don't know a lot.
Okay.
They know a lot about carpentry, but they don't know a lot about real estate.
Yeah, okay,
Okay, so just to, I want to talk about heat quickly.
Okay,
So, we do have a natural gas pipeline
yeah.
runs across the highway, so there's a pipeline.
Have you talked to Enbridge?
Not yet, so, but that's one of the things that I want to make sure that we can coincide that if need be with the trenching that we're doing too.
Right.
So, well, one option I'm thinking is definitely talk to Enbridge and see if we can get that service brought to the barn, right? So that's one option. I think that would ultimately, in the long term, make a lot of sense, but as a plan B, and I've seen these everywhere and in my neighborhood specifically, is there's big propane tanks outside of some of these structures too. So,
Sure.
is that a viable option cost wise and
Yeah. If
value of the property moving forward too? What's the best?
so, one of the things that I would say is you definitely want to have a gas hookup if at all possible, because natural gas will be about half the price of propane.
Okay.
And so one of the things that I would want you to do is I would want you to to talk to our friends at Enbridge, if it's Enbridge in the area, and maybe it's not viable to bring gas to your building. I don't know. So if it's not, propane is perfectly fine. It's just going to cost you more on an operating side. But first, before you make that decision, find out from Enbridge whether they can hook it up.
Yeah, because that would have to be trenched as well. I mean, you don't have overhanging Enbridge pipelines. So again, we run into the whole.
Yeah, you're probably going to end up doing hydro first. So and they won't run gas in the same trench as electrical for obvious reasons, right?
Yeah. So,
You know why, right?
well, in case there's a spark.
In case there's a spark, exactly. You definitely are going to run them together.
But we've got the right of way. So again, that's part of the issue too, right? Is we're going to start trenching through for gas. We're going to start trenching through for hydro.
Yeah, exactly.
We start like if that starts to compound in terms of the us going over the line with the right of way.
Oh, I wouldn't worry about that. I don't care. I mean, this guy has to show up at some point, I suppose, and he may never show up, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. The other thing, just quickly, that I want to talk about is in terms of being ready to take on customers. So let's say, for example, that Service Master came to us and we were almost ready to go, but not completely. We could have taken them on as a customer if we had a gate.
Yeah. Are you still there? Woody, are you there?
Yeah. Okay. You froze for a quick second. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't hear you. Can you start again? Woody?
Yeah, Bruce, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now. Sorry, my internet is terrible. Just terrible. It's disgusting. So can you repeat it again, please?
Yeah. So we were just looking at Service Master as a potential customer as an example. So let's just run a different scenario. They came to us and they had a requirement. We had a gate at this point in time. We had some fencing, we had some lighting. Right. So we need hydro first for all of that. But once we get hydro, I want to be able to put a gate up as soon as possible so that we can accommodate those types of one-offs as we start building for the contractor yards.
Right.
Does that make sense? So we need to start looking at the gates, the fencing, the lighting, or do we just purely focus on right now getting that barn up and running? Because either way, we're going to need a gate.
Yeah, I with all due respect, Woody, I would not try, and I wouldn't worry as much about cost as you do. Cost is very important, and I respect that, but I would do everything in parallel. And the reason for that, I got into trouble today, Michele, with my wife. And I'll tell you why. We had a great day yesterday. We got our occupancy permit after 2.5 years of very hard work. My wife, Dawn, is in Belleville today, and she's been there for the last few weeks, kicking ass and taking names to get this thing finished. I mean, she's done a great job. And this morning I call her up after, and I congratulated her and the team. And then I gave her a laundry list of things to do. And she said, I don't want you to tell me what to do. I didn't call you so I could get a list of more things to do. We're all like super excited here, and you know, we're happy, and you're giving me more work to do now today. I said, I am. And then I made it worse. I said to her, you want to know the definition of a professional, Miss Dawn? No, she says. Well, I'm going to tell you anyway. I said, Steve Nash, who was Canada's greatest basketball player back in the day, said the definition of a professional is the player who has the greatest game of his or her life, gets up the next day and goes to practice. That's the definition of a professional. And he said, you just demonstrated an unprofessional attitude. Oh, she hung up on me. And so after this call is over, I have to call her and see if I can get back in her good graces. We've been married 38 years, so I don't think she's going to leave me anytime soon. But she was popping mad. But I mean it. The definition of a professional is the person who plays his or her greatest game and gets up the next day and goes to practice. When we got the Ottawa Senators franchise in a very tough competition, and it was announced out of eight or nine competitors, cities in the States and Canada, that the cities of Ottawa and Tampa were awarded expansion franchises. This is back in December of 1990. The city of Ottawa partied like crazy. My staff partied like crazy. You know what I did? I got up, I drove to Miami with one of my key people. I got on a plane, flew back to Montreal, hired a car because the weather was terrible to take me back to Ottawa. And the next day I was in the office organizing a season ticket drive that collected $22.5 million in cash over the next 2 weeks. That's what I did. Everybody else got drunk and partied. I got up and went back to work. That's a true story.
Yeah, I believe you. I believe you.
And when my wife calms down, I'm going to remind her of that story, because we have a tenant who needs some immediate information. She's going to take up the 2 of our commercial bays, and she cannot wait even 24 hours for some of the stuff that she needs, because she's moving her business to our business, and she needs help today, not next week and not the week after, today. So Woody, I tell you the story because I love you and I respect you, and I know you're careful with costs. But if you want my advice, you do everything because you believe in this project and you want to get to the end as fast as you can. That's my opinion. And if you know, I was born, Woody, to lead men and women. I'm the kind of guy who could have been a very good general, in my opinion. Maybe I'm not right about that, but I think I am, because I've been in some very difficult situations and I've led men and women. They follow me through hell and back. They have. I'm a leader. I've been that way all my life. And it's not necessarily the best thing, because sometimes people don't like you for it. And sometimes you would like to say, can't somebody else take on the burden of being a leader? Leave me out of it. It doesn't work like that way. When I was 9 years of age, if there was a flat tire as we drove through the country with my father, my mother, my grandfather, my grandmother, you know, all of us packed into one of those old Chevys, you know, that were huge, and that we had a flat tire. Nobody knew how to fix a flat tire. I fucking knew. I was 9. So what I'm saying to you is, what a good general does, male or female, doesn't matter. Women can be great leaders as well. Is you know the enemy's across the river, and you got to get your men and machines across the river, and you got to fucking kill that guy, and you got to go like hell bent for leather, because once you commit, you can't half commit. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you know, I think you should have your gate, your lights, your contractor yards, your workshops. You should spend the money because first of all, you have it. And second of all, if you didn't have it, we can get it. And I would spend as fast as I could, knowing sometimes I will go too fast and I will have to have the trenchers come back a second time. Okay, it'll cost you more, it will. But you'll get finished and you'll win this war. Because I want you to win this war. Because you and I, Woody, and I haven't had enough time with Michele, but you and I want you to have a dozen of these damn things. But you got to finish the first one. And you got to believe in yourself. Because I believe in you more than you believe in you. And I don't mean to insult you. I really like you and I really respect you. But you're taking too long, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's fair game.
That's 100%.
And I was going to suggest, I wasn't going to say this, and I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings because I didn't mean to, because I really respect you. Okay, this is trying to be helpful. Okay, I'm your friend and your coach.
Yep.
Look, I love the fact that you're putting sweat equity into this. I think that's great. But if you need a carpenter or you need some professional, I can't tell you, I had one friend, he's a scientist and a really, really smart guy, way smarter than me. He started to buy crappy houses in Barhaven, fix them up and sell them. And I said to him, I can't remember his name now. Was a very good friend. He hates me now, by the way, but he was a very good friend then because he didn't like it when I gave him advice. I was his coach, but he didn't like it. But anyway, I'll call him Malcolm. I for some reason I've forgotten his name. But anyway, Malcolm. The first one he bought had raccoon poop in the attic, which is very, very poisonous. If you get that in your lungs, you can die. So he had to have a full hazmat suit on to go up in there and clean it up. So he did all the work himself. 2 years later, he wasn't half done. The bills are piling up. You know, you got to pay property taxes, and he had a mortgage on the damn thing. It was just piling up. And finally, I said, Malcolm, you have got to get a professional in here to finish this thing. At this rate, it'll take you 5 years to finish this thing. You'll never finish it. Because he had a real job. He was a master scientist in Canada, a very important person in the science community. And I said, you're a scientist. You're not a house renovator. So finally, he did. His wife, I remember her name, Marianne, she twisted his arm and he did hire a contractor. And within a few months, it was finished. And he sold the building and he didn't make any money, but at least he didn't lose any money. But it was finally finished. And he never did another one.
Yeah.
I agree. I think that's an awesome approach.
And as you know, Woody, if somebody comes along and they just need a 50-foot by 50-foot contractor yard and it's gated, it has the privacy screening up and it's graveled and there's some kind of gate, they're good to go. They don't need the workshop. If they need a workshop, they can get one of those little mini offices and put it in their enclosure and they can do what they need. If they have to, they can put a generator to it until you get the hydro. But I think you should finish everything. And if you need help from professionals, plumbers, electricians, carpenters, whoever, just go out and hire it.
Okay, yeah. I agree.
I am a little disappointed that here we are about a year later, or maybe I don't know how long it is, but at least 8 months later, and you haven't talked to Enbridge.
No, we bought it in November. Yeah.
Okay, I apologize. Listen, I should shut up now. I
No,
don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
I don't think you're hurting anyone's feelings. I think Woody and I need this kick in the ass because it's so new to us. So
Yeah, we don't know what we don't know, and that's.
So
I recognize that. No, and Woody, I know you're so careful. You don't want to make mistakes. But here's the thing: I guarantee it, you're going to make mistakes. You could plan this thing out. Like again, a good general knows you could plan. Your war plan will change the moment you come into contact with the enemy. Right? It will. So they are flexible. I mean, good ones. The other ones send the charge of the light brigade, right, down to face Russian machine guns, and they all die. That's a bad general. That is an incredibly stupid plan. Well, so the generals who are not flexible and don't change their plans, realizing that their initial war plan is not going to work, get their men killed, right? Okay, so you have to be flexible, and you guarantee you'll make mistakes. With this coaching, we're trying to minimize that. I get that, but you're still going to make mistakes. I make mistakes, and I've been at this for 40 years. You have to forgive yourself, okay?
Yeah.
All right, and you are going to be fantastic at this. And we know that when you have a dozen of these things, you'll be making so much money, you won't know what to do with it, really. Okay, a couple other things before we break. You asked about internet access. I did check. I'll share my screen with you one more time. Well, before I do that, I did find something else I wanted to share. Sorry about this, you guys. Sorry. Can you see this picture here?
Engage your brand and engage new, yes.
No. That's not what you're not seeing the barn?
No.
Okay, sorry, that's my fault. I want you to look at this barn. Can you see the barn now?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a gas-fired furnace here with an outlet, and we just dump the heat in like that. You see that?
Okay.
So, and this wasn't very good. So the guy who installed it, talking about mistakes, did you know, Michele, that heat rises?
Yes.
Why in the hell would he put the outlet 10 feet in the air?
Oh, yeah.
So what we did was we extended this out here like that. So we extended it out here with a tube, and we put blowers in it so that it would bring the heat down like that. Okay.
Nice.
But it's a very, very simple thing. It's a gas-fired furnace with a simple distribution system, and it turns out this was not right. So you need a tube that comes here. If you know what I'm talking about, ductwork that comes out here, right?
Yeah.
Super, super, super cheap, and it works great. Okay, I wanted to show you that. So I finally found that. And then I wanted to show you, I just checked here. Let's start over. I wanted to put in for you for Bell Internet. I think there is Bell 5. I mean, I'm having problems with mine, but it's still, I think, a system that's worth looking at. So what is the address in Smith Falls?
3828. Lanark County 43.
Okay, 43.
Yeah, Smith Falls. There it is.
What happened? Oh, it's checking. It's a system to find out if you can get. I don't know if it checked it or not. Damn.
I went through that iteration yesterday, and I ended up in the exact same loop.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's found it. So I think you will be able to, because you're 3 minutes from downtown. I think you will be able to get Bell 5. And I think this is the way to go, probably. Like if you look at it, for $75 a month, you get 1.5 gigabits. Probably that'll do it.
Yeah.
10, you get 500, 3.0. So I mean, these are reasonable prices, because you'll be able to service the entire place, including you'll have Wi-Fi for the contractors, and you'll charge for that, right?
Yeah.
So you'll have Wi-Fi outside, you'll have Wi-Fi inside, and you can charge, I don't know, if you have, 6, 7, 8 workshops, and you have 15 or 20 yards, if maybe you have 30 of them and you're charging them each $60, or $50, that's $1,500 a month, and you're paying $125 a month, something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's what I would do. And what happens with, I don't have to tell you, what happens with Bell 5 is they'll come in and they'll trench it. They'll do that for free. So you'll have another trench, and they'll connect fiber optic cable to your barn, which would be fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Okay, I'm glad Michelle's in on this call as well at this point in time too, because
I think it would be helpful if you have time, Michele, to come on the next one if Woody doesn't fire me.
No. I really do want to be. It's just I've been slammed at work, but yes, Yeah,
But I
I'll,
think it helps Woody, gives him support from you, which I know he has, and support from me. And I'm expecting the next month we'll see a huge amount of project and progress. And I think we have better weather hopefully coming soon. All right.
Yeah, yeah.
So I would try, Michele, to by June to have at least 2 workshops ready, and I would have a few contractor yards ready, and I would have as much done as possible. Don't change the opening date, even if it's not completely finished. You have 2 workshops, you have 3 or 4 yards. That's the way to go. And we need it open in June because
absolutely.
people will do much more leasing in the spring and summer than we will in the winter.
Yeah.
I'll see you guys soon.
All right, thanks,
Thank
Bruce.
you, Bruce.
Bye
Thank
for now.
you.
Bye.